Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Friday, July 18th, 2025. I'm John Podhoretz, the editor of Commentary Magazine, and here to talk to you about St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Between the fall of Rome and the European Renaissance, Jewish and Islamic authors stewarded the great works of the West and fostered the rebirth of scientific and philosophical inquiry in Europe. Now, St. John's College in Santa Fe offers an opportunity to explore these forgotten masterpieces while earning a one-year Master of Arts in Middle Eastern Classics degree, the only program of its kind. Students will explore questions of divine wisdom, religion, and the state, and more in this singular program of study. Learn more at sjc.edu/world classics. That's sjc.edu/world classics. We have nothing quite so grand to discuss today. In fact, we're going low. We're going deep. We're going to go deep down into the muck. The three of us, the four of us, me and executive editor Abe Greenwald. Hi, Abe.
Hi, John.
Senior editor Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, John.
And Washington commentary columnist Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, John.
You know, I had a 50th birthday 14 years ago. A couple of you, Abe was certainly there. I can't remember if any of the other of you were there. It was at the Fairway Cafe in New York, and my wife not only produced a really moving video, but there was also a book compiled of tributes and comic toasts and roasts and things to me that I have sitting in my house, and is something that I don't look at because I'm frankly embarrassed by it. But apparently there was another such volume produced on somebody else's 50th birthday, published by a New York or put together by a New York bookbinder in the year 2003 for a wealth manager of some repute at the time, named Jeffrey Epstein. And the Wall Street Journal informs us that among the many people who contributed to that book was one Donald John Trump. The Wall Street Journal has reviewed, it says, a page from the book, or a couple of pages from the book, clearly removed from the book by whoever is the source of the story, and that the Trump tribute to Epstein features a signature of Trump's that is a classic I assume is a classic Donald Trump signature, but in some manner or other is designed to look like a pubic hair.
Well, it's according to the description of the letter provided by the Wall Street Journal, which says it reviewed the letter while also sourcing its story to people who have seen the letter. The signature appears below the belt, so to speak, in the interior of an outline of a woman, drawn by allegedly Donald Trump.
So first of all, it's been 12 hours. I'm not here to sort of like go into provenance issues, but the description in the story is very baffling. They reviewed something and then they heard from others. I don't know what you need to hear from anybody else if you've seen the page. So it's not necessarily clear they've seen the page, but they do have a transcript of a little playlet that Trump supposedly composed.
That's a great
conversation between Donald John Trump and his friend Jeffrey Epstein. That I don't know how else to say this, because I don't want to like be accused of being a truther or something, but it doesn't sound like Trump.
No,
like the playlet doesn't sound like Trump. So it sounds like Anyway, we could read it or we could not read it. It doesn't sound like Trump. You can go read it. Whatever. So I don't even know what to say.
Well,
We
we
know
should at
Trump
least
was
let's provide
appealing-
some context
Yeah. Abe,
to
go
this.
ahead.
well,
Okay.
no, well, I mean, we
It
should
all
at
depends
least
on the context.
we
is
should
what
at
you're
least
saying.
convey what the playlet was about,
Yes.
because not only does it not sound like Trump, but it is luridly suggestive of the two of them, of Epstein and Trump, sharing dark secrets forever. I
Well,
mean,
do
it's
you know what
like
it sounds like?
Wonderful.
Do you know
Wonderful
the Mamet play A Life in the Theater?
I do indeed. Yes.
It's one of my favorites.
Early Mammoth,
and
1978. Yes.
I think it's hilarious. But the dialogue in that play are all these short sentences that are like highly elliptical or elusive or suggestive. And a lot of the comedy is you're never really sure what they're getting at when the two actors are talking. And so reading the letter as described by the Wall Street Journal, you get that same sense. And just to give people a, a taste here, there's a note, and I'm curious how big this note is. If you're going to draw an outline of a woman around it, this must be a really big page. But the note begins voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything. And then you go into the playlet. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Donald, and this is the final line. A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. And that's it. That's the Wall Street Journal scoop, which had Washington on its toes, ready to go all day yesterday. And I have to say, this story is not only a disappointment for people who were expecting a huge bombshell, there are also provenance issues, as you mentioned, because no one has seen this page. That the Wall Street Journal has not released an image of the page. And third point I'd make about it, this was the moment when MAGA and Trump have reunited after splitting for the past 2 weeks over the Epstein scandal, or the mishandling of the Epstein scandal by the Justice Department. MAGA has now rallied to Trump's side, not only calling the story fake news, but also cheering Trump's request that the DOJ release grand jury material related to Epstein in the coming weeks.
Okay, just in terms of one's bull detector, and not that the reporters who reported this story, Khadija Safdar and Joe Palazzolo, are not in earnest in reporting it, but because I am casting some doubt on the reality of this thing, I just want to explain why. The story says pages from the leather-bound album are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. So that's number one. So what they're saying is these pages were somehow in either custody of the Justice Department or were part of an investigation by the Justice Department. But that would have been in 2008 or 2007. Epstein first arrested in 2006. So it's almost 20 years since the Justice Department officials referenced saw these documents. Okay? Now, clearly, somebody read to these two reporters this really Beckett-like exchange in existential theater.
It's deep.
Very deep. And the letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. It concludes, "Happy birthday, and may every day be a wonderful event." So they don't say whether they saw the page. They've reviewed the page. They know of other pages, which included, they say flatly, without any, they say, among those who submitted letters were Leslie Wexner and Alan Dershowitz. And they read Wexner's message. They publish Wexner's message. "I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is." And after was what appeared to be a drawing of women's breasts. Wexner would not comment. Dershowitz wrote something, and then he said, "I don't remember what I wrote. It was a long time ago." So the bookbinder, Herbert Weitz, is dead. And
How
it doesn't sound like
convenient.
Trump. And it's okay. So
And we're talking about it.
So
Still.
I sort of assume that if they had the page, the Journal,
Right.
they would have reproduced the page. Now maybe it's a second. Maybe they're doing the classic.
Maybe a second day
Breitbart
story.
game. Right. They're holding the page for a second day story. In other words, they wanted to smoke Trump out, have him say, "I'm gonna sue you. I never wrote this thing," and then they're gonna drop a second day bomb on his head, and we don't know that.
That's what, remember, Jeffrey Goldberg did with the Signal Gate. It is a
classic.
Right.
And I actually do attribute this. This was a very big game that Andrew Breitbart used to play when he had news, and when he and that guy who ran Project Verita, James O'Keefe, had news. They would release a story, and then people would say it's a lie, it's a fake, it's this, it's that, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day they would release the evidence that meant that the people who had said this were fools and liars. So it's a approach. It's not really a classic newspaper person's approach. Like you dump your evidence as when you have it to make the story more authoritative. And is it believable that Trump would write something bawdy and salacious and tasteless to his friend Jeffrey Epstein in 2003 for his birthday? Sure, of course it is. What year did he tell Billy Bush that he thought that, when you're a star, you grab women by the muh?
I think it was like 2 years later.
Yeah,
right?
Okay. So it's not that it's not credible that he did such a thing. I guess the question is, what does it mean, or what does it matter? This happened 3 years before Epstein was arrested. All of this is intended to be suggestive of the idea that Trump was a participant in Epstein's monstrous behavior.
In his crimes.
Right. And so...
But there's no evidence of that. And in fact, there's NBC News reporting. And of course, NBC News' investigative team has been very antagonistic toward Trump, stretching back to the 2016 campaign. One of their investigative reporters, a man named David Rode, said on Morning Joe yesterday that they have not been able to find any connection in the material that they've reviewed between Trump and Epstein's illegality. And then the Washington Post fact checker, again, Glenn Kessler, not someone inclined to support Donald Trump or defend Donald Trump, about an hour before the Wall Street Journal scoop broke, published a piece in the Washington Post saying there is no evidence that Donald Trump was involved in any of Epstein's crimes. So what we're having here is that parts of the media aligned with the Democrats, who have finally found an issue 7 months into this presidency that they have been able to used to put the White House on the defensive are engaged in the kind of classic media campaign to keep a story that is harmful to Trump alive. And it's mainly by innuendo. And the material in this story, in this particular story, doesn't, I mean, it's just weird. And until we see the page and until we can see Trump's signature and we can see the drawing, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. It struck me that the last time a president has gone to a paper to tell them to spike a story, at least as far as I can recall, was in 2005 or 2006. I think it was 2005 when when the Bush administration went to the New York Times to tell them don't publish this story revealing the existence of the terrorist surveillance program, the mass surveillance program. And it shows you how far we've come as a nation, that 20 years ago, Bush was talking to Sulzberger saying, don't do this. You're going to compromise the war on terror. It's going to reveal our secrets to the enemy. And now in 2025, we have Trump talking to Murdoch saying, don't publish the story. It's ridiculous, and it involves a cartoon of a naked lady.
I think we're also all sort of avoiding the other main takeaway from this, which is that all the remaining secret Epstein files might just be hand-drawn illustrations. And maybe that's why they don't want to release
Well,
them.
there's just, I mean, the files, that's the...
Well, the Kama Sutra is hand-drawn.
that's the kind of the, I don't want to say comic aspect because it involves terrible things, you know? But when we talk about the Epstein files, what does that mean? I think many people have an image of a file cabinet somewhere that contains all the names of all the Johns, so to speak, all the people who were involved in the sex trafficking and the crimes with underage girls.
Right, like it's a knock list.
Right, but in fact, it seems that the Epstein files, quote unquote, is just this massive material that the government got when they finally went and arrested him the second time, the time that led to his incarceration in prison and his eventual death. And so this story will always remain alive because the Epstein files are so vast and sprawling that it's like, there's a book apparently from the 50th birthday that is leather bound and has all these bizarre tributes to this obvious con man who was bilking Les Wexner for hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is going to be the rest of our lives.
Okay, so in 2015, the issue of whether Donald Trump was a sleazeball in relation to women was the final question of the campaign in which he was eventually elected president.
Right.
There was no bigger news story since 9/11, in my estimation. Okay, the financial meltdown. There was no bigger news story from the financial meltdown until October 2016 than the Access Hollywood story. And it was so serious that the Speaker of the House said that the Republican nominee for president should step down and someone else should take his place because he could no longer win the presidency. Trump took it in stride, kind of apologized, then kind of took back the apology, then showed up at the second debate with every woman who had credibly accused Bill Clinton of sexual indiscretion or mistreatment.
Amazing move.
Ended up winning the presidency. So in one sense, one can say that politically, this issue was litigated as hard, politically litigated, as hard as an issue can be litigated. There's been more. There's the E. Jean Carroll case.
Carroll, right?
right, in which he was found civilly liable for sexual assault.
There was Stormy Daniels.
Stormy Daniels, right? Although the Stormy Daniels thing all involved her breaking her NDA,
Right.
And then not getting punished for breaking her, and
But of
then
course,
making a
led to
deal.
Donald Trump's criminal conviction, as we were
That's
reminded.
true. Although not about Rice. Although not about that was not about his sexual indiscretion with her. It was about
checks.
him checks,
Yeah.
right? So this is a through line in Trump's career that has repeatedly failed to have the effect that, as you would say in 2005, given your anecdote about what it was that the Bush administration sought to, make a backdoor deal with the New York Times over, that one would have thought would have destroyed anybody at any other time in American history. But things have happened in the interim, and the Bill Clinton presidency, I think, most prominently happened to say that at least one political party that could have made hay out of this decided to line itself up in 1998 behind a person who, had an affair with an intern and was credibly accused of pretty serious sexual malfeasance and crimes. In addition to that, the Democratic Party said that was fine with them, wouldn't even censure him, wouldn't even agree to a vote to censure him. And it therefore was compromised when the time came for it to be the paragon and beacon of virtue against this supposed sexual predator and monster who was the candidate of the opposing party. They could not recover from that hypocrisy. So now it's 2025, and there is this story, and no one, it's like potato chips. Like you see the word Epstein somewhere, you're gonna click. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're like, this is a terrible story. It doesn't matter. All of that. Word comes up, it's Pavlov's response. You're gonna click. So the Democrats like it. MAGA is obsessed with it. Ordinary people are titillated by it, and the media see a chance not only to harm Trump, but to play into a story that is of interest to people who have no attention span.
In the middle of summer,
right?
When usually there's not much.
Well, there's also all the unanswered questions about it, and that's what everyone wants. And speaking of, so I want to take a step back because I'm trying to wrap my head around all of this, and I have a question in earnest here. Epstein was charged with trafficking in 2019, and then he killed himself, right? What is the reason that the men who were involved with the women, and when I say what is the reason, I don't mean what's the theory about the cover-up. I mean, what is the actual technical surface reason that there has been no one except Ghislaine Maxwell who's convicted of trafficking for Epstein? Why have none of the men allegedly involved? I mean, not that we have, not that there is a list.
I believe the answer
Charged
is there was a statute of limitations issue that nothing happened. Epstein was arrested in 2006, and that was sort of the end of the period in which he was doing the supposed trafficking. Case comes back up 13 years later, and as I say, there is a question, I think, about statute of limitations.
Right.
Secondly,
evidence as well. Probably might be hard to bring cases. If there's an accusation, then there's a case. How do you go about assembling a case against the accused? But I think not to step on John, but I mean, your question is what has fueled so much anger.
No, I know, but I'm looking for the surface, for the technical reason. Not right. For the theory about why the technical reason is a cover up. I'm just trying to get. I'm starting with the.
So I don't honestly know the answer to that question. As I look through what little material I can pull up as we are having this conversation, the first time that he was investigated for trafficking underage girls was 2005 in a local case in Palm Beach, and he pleaded guilty to the charge. And the guilty plea was obviously some form of, you know, he pled maybe so that he wouldn't have to name anybody. You make a deal to plea. He got a very short sentence, right? 13 months in custody with work release. And then he was arrested again on charges of sex trafficking in 2019. But yeah, why? So the charge of sex trafficking goes to his behavior, not to the crimes themselves, right? Not to It goes to his behavior in transporting minors over state lines, right? Is a very specific,
Right.
for the purposes of, that's the Mann Act. There's a whole, like, you can't transport minors over state lines. So that was the charge against him. Maybe, and since he had, by the way, already pled guilty to having done it, he didn't exactly have a way of pleading not guilty to having done it when federal charges were brought against him. Right, the case in Florida in 2008 was a Palm Beach County case. Then there was a federal case made against him in 2019.
I think the bottom line, because we don't want to spend the whole hour on this, is that yesterday evening was a turning point in the Epstein scandal that has been rocking Washington for the past 2 weeks or so. And I think it was a turning point in this way. I mentioned that the people who had been criticizing the Trump administration and Attorney General Bondi and even President Trump, though, of course, always indirectly, for not releasing the full Epstein material, are now defending the president against what they see as a mainstream media attack. And Trump has not, in the past 24 hours, attacked his own supporters, or as he called them, former supporters. I think thinking of Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon when he's making that accusation. But he hasn't done that. Instead, he's attacking the Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch, who he's planning to sue the paper, while also saying that he's asked Bondi to release more material. So that gets the Republicans, or in MAGA, I think, on the same page, at least while you're hearing my voice.
By the way, it's important to note, this is important to note because, again, like, there's so much detail. So Epstein was not tried in 2019. He was arrested in 2019 on charges of sex trafficking, and then he committed suicide in his jail cell.
Right.
So he was arrested on July 6, 2019 at Teterboro Airport. He was brought to the Metropolitan Correctional Center, and on August 19th, he was found dead in his jail cell. So whether the case would have continued and then surfaced those people that you're asking about, Abe, we don't know. And one of the reasons that there is credibility to the idea that something untoward might have happened to Epstein in his jail cell is precisely that he had pled in 2008 in Palm Beach County, so he didn't have to testify. And the Justice Department would not have accepted a plea deal in 2019 they would have taken him to trial. No way, shape, or form were they not going to take this to trial, unless, of course, Trump is right and they needed to protect Democrats or something. But they wouldn't have.
It was Trump's Justice Department.
It was Trump's. That's right. It was Trump's Justice Department. So he killed himself, and that was why the suicide stank, as a convenience.
There will always be questions, but
Yeah.
here's the other half of my point about the politics. I do think Democrats were so excited to find an issue that put Trump crosswise with his base and kind of on his back foot, that they've, as always, kind of leaned too heavy into the issue. The memes, the calls for open up everything, more transparency, I believe misunderstand what's happening here. Some Democrats have even tried to connect the Epstein case to Medicaid cuts, which is just, it's such a leap of logic in the liberal imagination, but all has to do with they wanted this narrative that Trump is out for his billionaire friends and not out for working people. I don't think it's working. There have been several polls, including the CNN poll by our friend Harry Enton in recent days, showing that Trump's approval rating among Republicans, you assume his base, right, has been great, has stayed rock steady or even gone up slightly during this whole affair. And the Democrats also have vulnerability here as well, because remember, when Trump was friends with Epstein, that was in a period when he was a Democrat and an independent or a Reform Party candidate. And all the other individuals that we know, I mean, the American figures anyway, they're all Democrats. They're all on the left. So if there's more material that comes out, there are Democratic figures who are probably going to be burned as well.
So Trump has said last night, due to the overwhelming evidence, overwhelming Narishkeit that's going on here, I am asking the Justice Department to release all relevant grand jury evidence. He, by the way, cannot do that. It is not for the Justice Department to order the release.
They have to request it.
A key clarification there is that not all related relevant evidence, but relevant testimony. The thing that's going to drive the thing that's going to drive people crazy about this, who are following the conspiracy theory, is that the testimony itself is a very small part of a federal investigation, even a grand jury, even the evidence presented in order to get to a grand jury and all that stuff. It's like tip of the iceberg sort of stuff. And the other thing is that the testimony, because he said the testimony itself can't just be released. It will take probably a year, right, to get grand jury testimony approved and redacted and whatever for release.
Okay, and the other thing about the Epstein file, and this is very important, is that when they had the press conference to announce they were rearresting him, or they were arresting him on these federal charges, they said that when they went through the house, they found a trove of material. But according to them, there is no way on earth that the Justice Department or anyone can release that material. It is child pornography. It is photographs. I believe the number was something akin to 70,000 images of underage and not underage women in various states of Deza and whatever else they might have been in. The Justice Department of the United States cannot release pornographic material,
which is why the story will go on forever.
Right, exactly.
We'll be talking just like how Trump came to office and said he was going to release the JFK files, the RFK files. Okay, so that's decade. JFK was assassinated in 1963, so it's been 60 years. We're still talking about that. We're going to be talking about this. There'll be something coming up decades from now. The question has always been a political question, and how this kind of knocked Trump off what was a remarkable string of successes, and the administration plans to build on those successes and to promote them. They haven't been able to do that for the past 2 weeks because everyone in Washington has been talking about this story. And so maybe now I can segue to
Wait, I just
another.
want to make. I've been dying to make one point here.
Okay.
To build on the point that you made, Matt, about the fact that through this, Republicans have been favorably disposed toward Trump, despite all the efforts here to drive this wedge between them. And I just want to note the fact that what this means, in addition to other bits of evidence, is that the conspiracy theory influencer wing of MAGA is not aligned with MAGA.
Right.
This goes for Israel too.
Foreign policy.
Yes, on foreign policy, they speak the loudest, but they do not speak for most of Trump's.
And even on economics, they are closer to Democrats. Let's not forget the kind words that Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene had to say about Zoran Mamdani. Now, Israel's probably the reason why Tucker likes Zoran, but he's also open to the anti-capitalism of it. This was a teachable moment because you see that many of these figures, they're not Republicans. They're not part of the Trump coalition. They're a piece of a piece, and they are, they dominate the public discourse. Now, look, there are plenty of reasons to want more information about the case, and I do think that Attorney General Bondi mishandled this by overpromising and underdelivering, which you don't want to do in politics. But for this larger group, like Tucker Carlson and Bannon at the TPUSA conference last weekend in Florida, the more you look at, the more you pay attention to them, their agendas line up not with the Republican Trump agenda, but with the Democratic agenda in order to destroy Trump. So in any case, on to the happy news, the good news, and that is not only will PBS and NPR be defunded after decades of Republican efforts, but Colbert has been canceled. And I think we should note this as well. And in particular, John, I noticed a post you had on X, because you post so rarely on X. I noticed this one.
It's very fresh when I do it.
Right. About what the true meaning of the Colbert cancellation is.
There's a lot to say about the Colbert cancellation. First of all, the stats came out for the late night ratings for all late night hosts for the first quarter of 2025. And it is the case that Colbert outrates Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon. Colbert has 2 million viewers on average. 10th of those are in the coveted demographic. That's actually where advertiser rates are set. That's 18 to 49-year-olds. He has about 210,000 people in the demographic. Kimmel, 1.7 million viewers with 200,000, also around 200,000 people in the demographic. And Fallon, 1.2 million viewers with, 175,000 people in the demographic. Just take a second to think about this. ABC, NBC, and CBS each have a late night show. Add up the audience of those late night shows, and they do not get to 6 million people a night. This is Johnny Carson's time slot. This is Letterman versus Leno. This is Conan O'Brien and Letterman and Leno and, whatever. Okay. Nightline. 30, 40 million, in the heyday, 50 million people were watching. Little as 10, 15 years ago, probably 20 million people were watching. 6 million people. And who is the number one person in late night broadcasting? Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld, Fox show, started, I think, 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, as this sort of late night comedy show. 3.3 million. And for a network that is famous for having a demographic roughly the age of Methuselah, he also has more people in the coveted 18 to 49 demographic than any of those other shows, around 250,000 people. So you can look at this in one of two ways. One is Colbert's paid $20 million a year, and he's not earning it. Show has 2 million people watching it. 200 people, as he said last night, work on the show. These shows are not expensive in the way that other TV shows are expensive. But say it costs them $100 million to run the show over the course of a year. And it's far from clear to me that it even earns $100 million in advertising. So it's either makes almost no money or it loses a little money. And CBS has already folded up its second hour, which was Craig Ferguson and James Corden, and then it had a game show on. And they already decided they were giving up on late night then and turning the time back to the local stations to put on whatever they wanted, and then the local stations get all the advertising revenue. And they have now decided, as was the case for most of the time that Johnny Carson was the power player in late night, to not have a late night at all. And that, sort of like after 11 p.m., that's the end of the broadcast day for CBS, the network. And it all goes back to that's the story. And this is the story of broadcast television. There will not be a late night in 5 years. No one's surviving this. They've already cut Fallon back to 4 days a week. And Jimmy Kimmel says he doesn't want to do the show anymore. And there's no, it's just like, it's like being the host of like a vaudeville in the theater is emptying and emptying and emptying and emptying. Okay, so there's that. That's a business thing. Second thing is he being canceled because of his politics? And you know what? I hope so. And I'm going to tell you why I hope so.
Hear, hear.
Because David Ellison, who is going to be the new owner, basically, of CBS, the son of Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle and the fourth richest man in the United States, something like that. So I speak, of course, as the head of a nonprofit organization dedicated to Zionism and the furtherance of the place and importance of Judaism, the Jewish religion, the Jewish people in the United States and in the world. Larry Ellison is a Jewish man. Sherry Radstone, who is the person he and his son are taking the network over from, Jewish woman, both of them very strong Zionists, but very quiet. Ellison has been very, very quiet as a sort of player in the Jewish philanthropic world and in the Zionist world, but less quiet since October 7th. And Stephen Colbert and his show is anti-Zionist filth. And he has taken this show and he has made it a spokesman for, it's a comedy, a late night comedy show. Do you know who the guest was last night? He came out, he said, my show's over. I'm so happy. Thank you so much for watching. I will be broadcasting another 10 months, but I'm so grateful. 200 people here are wonderful, and you, the audience, are wonderful. Thank you so much. And now here are the credits. Late Night with Stephen Colbert. Tonight.
It was Adam Schiff, wasn't
Senator Adam Schiff of California.
As the main, like the big
Carrigan,
draw.
Actor Anthony Carrigan, who is in the Superman movie, and some band. Senator Adam Schiff. What a knee slapper, huh?
Oh my gosh.
When I want to turn on TV at 11:30 at night and have a little laugh before I go to bed, or like hear something about something fun in culture, a movie that might be opening up. Today, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the movie, the sequel or the reboot is coming out, and
Who better to talk to than
Senator Adam Schiff. Last week it was Zora Mamdani. Like, if Larry Ellison and David Ellison have come to this network and said, I don't want to run this filth. I'm buying it outright. It's not even a stock deal. Like, I'm buying it from Sherry Redstone. I'm not going to sit here and have Stephen Colbert broadcast anti-Zionist filth on the network that I own. And I say, hail, hail to you. I don't care. This is not about Trump and the deal that Trump made to get $15 million so that the deal would go through. It is, I'm worth $10 squillion, and I'm not kowtowing to your horse shit. You self-righteous, factitious, commie. Go, and I believe this might well happen, go over to MSNBC and peddle your wares to the 800,000 people who tune in on MSNBC in late night. Go ahead. I'm releasing you from your contract. See what you can do on your own. I'm excited by this news. If it's political or ideological, so much the better. How many political or ideological wins have we gotten? We gotten in this realm? Almost none.
Well, we blew up Fordo. That was a big one.
But that's not.
Oh, you mean the intellectual cultural space? Oh, yeah.
Also, I mean, the reason
I just wanted to make sure we
it would be
agreed
great
on
to
that.
get the reason we got the win is because they're Ellison and company are just presenting something that everybody else knew, which needed to be said. The over politicization of these comedy shows is boring.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
It's just bad TV. It's not good. It's not interesting. It's not fun. It's not. That's the other part of it, is that the politicizing is, on the one hand, yes, it's really obnoxious to the half of the country that doesn't, agree with this or whatever, that sits there and gets, heckled by, by late night talk show hosts. But it's just not good TV, especially, by the way, at 11:30 at night.
And
glut.
Go ahead.
And there's such a glut of it. I mean, it's what late night has become for so long on every network. I haven't watched any of those shows for ages, because when that sort of shift happened years ago, I said, "Oh, that's no longer about entertainment. That's about rallying."
And then of course the actual funny guys are exploring new media, like John Mulaney's show on Netflix, which I think is great, or Conan O'Brien's podcast, which is growing in strength. And I think it's an open question. Say Colbert
Shane Gillis had just finished the second season of a Netflix show as well,
and he just had a huge appearance at the ESPYs this past week. I think it's an open question. If Colbert decides, and I'm not going to go to MSNBC and fight it out with Lawrence O'Donnell, for ownership of the 10 p.m. slot, I'm going to start my own podcast. I really doubt he would have the reach of some of the most successful podcasters. I mean, Colbert versus Megyn Kelly. I think Megyn Kelly wins that easily. So the audience for these guys, it's not only small, it's minuscule. What is the demand? What is the demand for what they're selling? I think it's non-existent.
They believed, and we saw this happen in real time, and it is one of the many cultural effects of Trump. There was a moment in 2015, 2016 when it all changed in late night, literally a hinge moment. And it's when Trump went on Jimmy Fallon's show. And Jimmy Fallon mussed up his hair. And Jimmy Fallon said, "Why don't you get a better hairdo?" And they laughed together. And the entire universe came down on Jimmy Fallon's head. How dare he? This fascist is coming to take over America. He is participating in the effort to whitewash and cleanse Trump of his evil and his sin. Fallon was the number one person in late night. He lost a significant amount of his audience, never got back to number one. That was 2016. Colbert and even Jimmy Kimmel. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, just on ABC, Jimmy Kimmel came to prominence as a person in television, co-hosting a show that was like the Jeffrey Epstein comedy hour called The Man Show, which was the Manosphere before the Manosphere, which was like, yeah, all you politically correct people, here are some boobs. let's talk about what, who cares what women want? Here's what men want. That was the joke of the Man Show was, we are unreconstructed, old time Playboy magazine reading slime balls, and come watch us and think that we're funny. By
And
2015,
the fade in and out from commercials was women jumping on trampolines.
right. 2015, 2016, Jimmy Kimmel becomes Cotton Mather. Woe betide our culture with the evildoer who is coming to our shores. Like, this is a show that started at ABC with an open bar so that the audience in the studio could get drunk so that they would laugh harder at Jimmy Kimmel's jokes. I'm not kidding about this. That was what happened when Jimmy Kimmel Live started on ABC in 2008, 2009, something like that. This was they thought that they had struck gold, like the New York Times had struck gold, in being anti-Trump, that there was this anti-Trump audience and that they could play into it. And it's also, something that they obviously deeply believed. And Colbert rode that train since his show, his own persona began as a parody of Bill O'Reilly. That was the Colbert Report, was his Comedy Central show that was a parody of Bill O'Reilly's Fox show in which he was playing Bill O'Reilly. So then he stopped being Bill O'Reilly. He was himself, only with the same affect. So he was like a big blowhard, loudmouth, yelling, not very funny, but he was Bill
Al
O'Reilly.
Franken on Air America.
Yeah. Anyway, so this happened, the self-destruction of late night. There are many other causes to it, like stars don't have to go on late night shows anymore because they curate their own brands on social media and all that, and they don't need to subject themselves to being interviewed or showing up there. It's no help to them and all of that. So the fact that every Thursday night you could reliably on one of these shows have a huge star come on to promote their movie for the Friday weekend, that was no longer the case. So you ended up with Adam Schiff, on Thursday night, on the biggest night for broadcast television. That's a funny.
Can I mention my favorite Jimmy Kimmel moment briefly for no reason other than I think it makes him look so foolish? Do you remember in 2015 when a Minnesota dentist shot some lion on safari and everyone went crazy for a week?
Yeah.
And Kimmel came out in the midst of that with a picture of the lion. It's a comic. This is, post-Man Show, but he's the guy who did the Man Show, as you said. And he holds up the picture of the lion and he says, I just can't understand how someone could do something so violent to a creature that's so beautiful. And he broke down crying over the lion.
Yeah. And I think he's also, a few years later, talking about shouting your abortion from the stands. So shows you his priorities.
Right. I mean, so the weird conversion of these shows into a form of secular evangelical Sunday morning programming. It's like they're just Joel Osteen or the late Jimmy Swaggart or something. But what they are preaching is simply sort of anti-Trump leftist gospel. And
well, as you said,
there is an audience for it, and I can tell you how much it is. It's about 6 million people across 3 networks, and one network that is the counter programming to it gets 3 million.
But as you say, Colbert is worse because what he did with Mamdani, with this was this coordinated laundering of Mamdani's anti-Zionism,
right?
And that was like the moderator agreeing with Obama about we said terrorism, right, during the debate.
And remember that a lot of the tumult at CBS begins with Tony Dokapil's slightly aggressive questioning of Ta-Nehisi Coates after Ta-Nehisi Coates publishes his anti-Zionist book last year or the year before.
Last year, yeah.
Last year, yeah.
I think last.
So CBS has a big anti-Semitism problem,
Right.
and the new ownership is trying to do something about it, and rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, we hear these stories. We hear that David Ellison is talking to Barry Weiss about some weird version in which somehow the Free Press might essentially become the dominating player at CBS News or something like that. Whole point here is,
Can I make a suggestion? Late
yeah,
night with Nellie Bowles.
she's funny. She is certainly funny, but I do want to make this point, which is there's this whole question of whether or not Trump has been coercing these networks into financial settlements, right? CBS pays him to make the 60 Minutes suit go away, and we all understand that that's because they need him to approve the merger between Skydance and Paramount. ABC pays him $15 million to go away. That money, again, doesn't go into Trump's pocket. It's all supposed to go into his library or into PSAs or something like that. That is not what is going on here. What is going on here is, it's like if I hit the lottery, and the lottery was at $12 billion or something like that. As there was some lottery that got to $1 billion, but let's say I hit the lottery and I won $12 billion, and I turned around and was able to buy the Washington Post from Jeff Bezos, and I bought it for $12 billion. The first thing I would do is fire every single reporter and columnist that I didn't like. That's what I would do. That's not what other people would do. They'll scream, they'll say you're hurting your readers, and your subscriptions are going to go down, and what is this? Look how wonderful a product this was. And I would say, I don't care. I just bought this, and I don't want to be associated with Karen Attiah. Go work at a Starbucks. I'm done with you. Like, that's my fantasy of being a very rich person buying a media outlet, is that I would buy it in order to wreak vengeance on people who have been trying to destroy America and the West and our culture and the things that I most value and I most believe in. And if Larry Ellison and his son David are involved in that process, like I say, welcome to the club. Come to our roast on October 19th. I will direct the entire audience to give you a standing ovation, and it will be a wonderful time that was had by all, I will say. All right, so thanks for listening. I think we're going to be here longer than the 10 months that Stephen Colbert is going to remain on CBS. So, we'll still be around as the.
That's because we never have Adam Schiff on the program.
Oh, well, and then in the new media era, don't forget to like and subscribe our videos at the Commentary Magazine Podcast YouTube channel.
That is correct. And by the way, you can also subscribe to us. You can go. We have Instagram. We're on it. We got some great commentary stories that my colleague Stephanie Roberts has been producing, and so there's a lot that we're playing. We're playing in the field of new media. Just to give the daily update. Stop here. Thank you. We're at almost 18,000. We're trying to get to 20 by Labor Day. You can do it.
It's that summer doldrums. You got to resist the listlessness of summer.
Yeah, the very thing that is making us all click on Epstein. We just did half an hour on Epstein. Surely that's worth a few hundred subscribes. Since I know when you saw in our, in the tagline for this episode that we're going to talk about Epstein, it gave you a little frisson.
Immediately.
A little bit of excitement there. So, okay. For Matt, Abe, and Seth, I'm John Podhoretz. Keep the candle burning.